weren't.
Hi, welcome to another support video of the Parent Carer programme supporting youth anxiety. My name is Warren Matofsky. I'm one of the CAMHS psychologists.
And I'm Ruth Sequeira from the East Sussex Primary Mental Health Work team.
And in this video, we're going to be looking at a specific technique about the thoughts are not facts message as a way of beginning to talk to your child about how they get on with some of their anxious thoughts.
Can you move on to the next bit, Lauren? Okay, so yeah, we'd suggest that you use this approach at a time when things are reasonably calm in your household, and it can be useful before your young person's facing a kind of anxiety triggering situation. So it's about showing your child how they can question their thoughts. So we're not necessarily going to get anywhere in this first conversation, but it's just showing them that actually you can question these thoughts. It's not about telling them a reassuring thought or trying to convince them it's wrong. Just that kind of idea that thoughts can be challenged and considered in a different way. So the process is that a child names the negative thought that's going on for them, and this in itself can be quite difficult at the beginning. So yeah, it's really supporting your young person to kind of identify what is that negative thought, what's the anxiety saying, and then there's a process by which you can then sort of just question together the accuracy of that thought, and this can lead sometimes to a discussion of what might be a more realistic alternative. So quite often those anxiety thoughts are really kind of laden with that kind of emotion of fear and kind of overestimating the possibility of things going wrong. So we're really questioning the accuracy and looking at what might be a more realistic alternative.
Yeah, thank you, Ruth. So here's a kind of example. So it could be that your child is able to communicate, they've got an anxious thought, oh no, being sick means I will die soon, and having feelings of nausea means I will die soon. And then the question to question the accuracy might be, does everyone die from sickness? And through asking those questions, you might move to a more realistic alternative that actually most get better soon. Another anxious thought might be, oh, if I speak or do anything in class, they'll all laugh at me. And then you can question the accuracy will be, can I cope if someone laughs? And then you might move towards a possible alternative. I can manage being laughed at one time.
So just some tips for when you try this approach. So it's good to start with less threatening thoughts and not the most anxiety provoking thought that your young person has. And questions like, what does the anxiety say in this situation, can be quite useful. It just removes it a little bit from your young person, makes it a little bit easier for them to talk about sometimes. And the parent's role is to ask questions and suggest alternatives. So we're not going into convincing role here. We're not trying to tell the young person that they're wrong. We're just getting them to kind of, gently question the thought.
Yeah, and I think that's such an important message, Ruth. This isn't some Kavanagh QC or Rumpole of the Bailey kind of cross-examination, and that in a series of questions, all of a sudden, all the anxious thoughts will fall apart. Sadly, it doesn't work like that. It's more a kind of chipping away approach.
And it's about the child having a go at questioning the thoughts and showing your child as well that it's okay to talk about the anxious thoughts. So quite often those kind of fears are just in our heads and we don't talk about them, and actually just even that kind of message, it's okay to talk about this and it's okay to kind of think about alternatives and question the reality of those thoughts can be useful.
Yeah, and one thing I would suggest that is, if as you're trying to do this, the child becomes defensive, gets cross with you, and remember, it can be a risk for children with anxiety in their life to talk about anxious thoughts. So if they are becoming defensive, then it may be a time to pause the thoughts are not facts questioning and just empathize that they're finding it difficult. Oh, it sounds like asking this is really tough. Is that right? And perhaps leaving it there. And, you know, with this kind of approach, it's not in one discussion you're going to change something. We're looking for change over time. So it may be that you ask a couple of questions every other day or kind of once a week, so that they might start asking them those questions themselves. So it's this chipping away over time. And what we're really trying to do is encouraging the idea that just because we think something doesn't mean it will happen, doesn't mean it's true. So Ruth, do you want to go through some of the questions we use?
Yeah, so these are some examples of some of the questions that might be useful when you're having this discussion. So questions like, yeah, how likely is it to happen? How often has it happened before? So yeah, quite often young people can have really strong fears based on something that maybe has never happened, but they fear it will happen, or it's happened once and that's really stuck in their minds. Is it likely to happen now? And this idea of kind of let's pretend to be detectives can sometimes bring in a bit of playfulness, but also that idea of kind of like, yeah, what's the evidence for that thing happening, the kind of sort of thing that they're anxious about actually happening, and what's the evidence that that might not happen or that might not be true.
And yeah, I think about that, you know your child better than anyone else. You will know the style and sort of questioning that will suit them and might bring them into a discussion. Here's some other questions.
So what would you say to a friend that had this thought? So sometimes it's easier to kind of think about things in that slightly removed position of kind of, yeah, thinking about a friend who might be talking about that anxious thought, and what would they say to them? And also, so if it does happen, so if this kind of feared event does happen, like we had that example of somebody laughing at you, so actually how would you cope? So it can help take the kind of strength away from that thought. Actually, there can be a kind of like, well, actually it wouldn't be very comfortable, but I'd probably manage.
So I thought at this point, maybe Ruth, you and I could just give a kind of do a role play just to give a bit of a flavour about how it would work. Do you want to be the child with the anxious thought or the adult helper?
I'm happy to be a child today.
Okay, thank you. And okay, so let's move into the role play. So Ruth, tell me, what when the anxiety is around, what sort of thoughts come up?
I just feel like I can't do it. I feel like it's too much and I can't do it.
Okay, and you know, what sort of fears do you have about doing it, or any thoughts about what might happen if you tried to do it?
It's just, school's just so horrible, and I feel like the teachers always pick on me and they ask me questions and I don't know the answers, and everybody looks at me and it's really embarrassing. I go really hot and sweaty. It's really horrible.
Oh my gosh, that sounds awful. And I heard kind of loads of thoughts there. I mean, kind of one thought you mentioned is that the teacher always kind of picks on you. And I was just wondering, does that happen in every single lesson, every single day?
Not every lesson, but it does happen.
Okay, okay. And do you ever have lessons where it kind of doesn't happen, and while you might think you're going to be picked on by the teacher, it doesn't turn out that way?
I guess so. Yeah.
Okay, all right. So let's end the role play kind of there. I mean, I think I asked quite a few questions there. Sometimes it can be quite useful just to ask kind of one or two. So kind of one of our suggestions from this is maybe to, on one side of a piece of paper, write down one or two of your anxious thoughts, and on the other side of the paper, write down a couple of questions so that you're ready and prepared for a calm time when you can have a go at working on the thoughts are not facts message. Thank you.